everyone, and welcome back to the 6th episode of Innovation Circle, our live podcast where we sit and talk about different aspects of transformative innovation. As you can see, we have quite a crowd here and quite a crowd on the screen as well, which you probably can't see, but we even had to change to another location because today we are privileged to have a conversation with one distinguished guest and one distinguished moderator. And what we're going to do today is to put, as you all remember, we had a discussion on the aspect of demand side, how you stimulate the demand to support the acceleration of transformative innovation last week. And we've covered many different aspects of transformative innovation. Today, we're going to do something that we haven't done before, and we're going to focus a little bit more on directionality. What is the strive for transformative innovation is obviously to reach some sort of sustainability, and the explicit sustainable development goals. They are sort of the explicit goals by which we strive for. However, there is something interesting with the sustainable development goals is that they are also under, just as transformative innovation itself, under continuous discussion and continuous elaboration, and sometimes that manifests in actually the rewriting of the very goals. And the question is to what extent that actually then feeds back to the innovation process, the transformative innovation itself, and what implications it also has for us working with it. And now we're sitting here in the UN, and there is also a discussion going on about the inner workings and the operation of the UN itself. So that's kind of two topics here today that has everything to do with transformative innovation. And that is what we're going to dive into. What is also makes this episode a little bit more, even more sort of particular today is that it actually coincides with the principal meeting on this within this commission, that is the Regional Forum for Sustainable Development. This is actually going on right now as we speak. So with lots of events, lots of side events, lots of discussions coming from all the member countries and also affiliated, institutions and think tanks and so what. And with that said, it's actually very much a privilege to have convinced our Deputy Executive Secretary, Dmitry Mariyasin, to host this and moderate this session, because he comes with direct sort of insights of what's going on in the corridors. And also, we will have the opportunity to talk to Dominique Foray, who is a professor of economics at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, and also a member of the Swiss Science Council. And he's going to be here tomorrow in one of the panels talking about these issues. So this is the framing. This is what we're going to do today. We're going to turn our attention a little bit more to the question of directionality from our perspective, and how this actually manifests in the discussions outside here in the House, and and how that transforms into our discussion on innovation and transformation of society. So with that said, I leave this open to you. I shouldn't speak more. Let's make sure that these two gentlemen have their time.
Thank you very much, Mikael. It's my great pleasure to moderate today, and it's a real honor to be here today with Professor Dominique Foray. If you allow me, Dominique, so that we can keep our conversation informal, focused on provoking thinking, and I hope that we'll have also a conversation with the members of the ETI network who are connected online. Warm thanks to all of you for finding time to be with us. Mikael already introduced Professor Foray. Dominique, before we start, what is the most proud moment of your career? What is something that you would say, I did it, it was amazing? What would you say really is a matter of pride for you from the professional, research, academic, or any other perspective?
Thanks, Dmitry. Actually, this was yesterday. No, on Tuesday. Yes, yesterday actually this was, because I made my teaching actually. You know, actually I call them the babies. This is bachelor students, so they are around 19, something like that, and I'm precisely have a class which is about technology and institutions face aux crises, you know, facing crisis. And so then all these bachelor are top students. They are at EPFL, you know, future engineers, you know, the la crème de la crème. And this was so great atmosphere. I mean, I like teaching. I had a lot of questions. And so I'm very proud of, you know, having this kind of interactions with the young generation. I'm 65 a little bit more. So it's so good to keep, you know, these interactions with the young people, because then you keep really updated in, you know, what's happening. They help me actually a lot, you know, to understand directionalities, to understand, you know, all these issues, because our students at EPFL and in all universities, they are the best messengers of society, you know, because they have aspirations, they have a vision of their future, and they want really to understand what's happening. And so then they challenge me. And yesterday, I think the challenge was great. And I was, I think, rather successful in what I explained. So I'm very proud of yesterday.
Thank you, Dominique, for this great concrete example and for visualizing really how hope looks. I think it's a room full of engaged, enthusiastic students at EPFL talking about the future. Now, at the same time, what we read a lot about in the newspapers is that the world is in a difficult spot right now. We are hearing about the poly crisis. We in this region just heard at this morning's plenary session of the Regional Forum that unfortunately even the European region, which includes both developed and developing countries in Europe and Central Asia, is off track on the Sustainable Development Goals. Globally, we're badly off track, but even in Europe, we are not likely to meet actually most of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So, in your view, what is it that has been hindering the transformation that leaders aspired to when they adopted the Agenda 2030? It was not so long ago, the Agenda 2030 as a document, before we even get to the page with the goals, is aspirational, is full of promise of a much more inclusive society, of a much greener society, and yet we're not seeing this being realized. What is to blame? Is it all because innovation didn't deliver, or would you say there are many other things that didn't deliver and innovation actually did wonderfully?
Thank you. That's a great question, Dmitry. There are many reasons, but I like to precisely keep on your first, you know, options, which is innovation did not deliver. Actually, I think a key point is a misunderstanding of innovation. And because we all observed, you know, the incredible role of innovation in the 20th century when transforming our life in any dimension, mobility, communication, household equipment, health, of course, and increasing prosperity of the Western countries and then beyond. So we call it the great enrichment. So we observed this, and then we said, okay, let's use this extraordinary power to make a better world, a more sustainable world, etc., etc. But what we observed about the 20th century as so powerful engine for growth and transformation was business innovation, right? This was business, which really made this big transformation. That is to say, private entrepreneurs, innovators, imagining new products, services, processes, sometimes succeeding in reaching consumers and delivering the innovation at affordable cost, generating thereby profit and large social surplus, sometimes failing, so huge uncertainty. And this model that we try now to, in a sense, copy and paste, actually, was based on key values which were freedom. Freedom to experiment, freedom to try, freedom to enter new markets, and autonomy vis-a-vis governments. And so now we say, okay, let's innovate in this area. Let's do that. Let's, achieve this transformation. But this is difficult because precisely innovation cannot be planned. It's not a domestic animal. It's a wild animal. And you can't decree innovation. And all the success of the 20th century, which were great, of course, there are also a lot of problems, but the success of innovation in the 20th centuries were great, were based on this freedom to experiment on decentralized markets, autonomy vis-a-vis governments, etc., etc. And so then the essential problem we have here, this is how to solve this tension between freedom, autonomy on the one hand, and directionality planning on the other hand. To be more extreme, tension between indiscipline, innovation. This is indiscipline, You want to disrupt, you want to change things. And discipline, because following a certain direction, this is about discipline, actually. So then I think this misunderstanding of really what were the key ingredients of the success of innovation in the 20th century is important, because then we cannot really reproduce this model. Once we want really directions, we want really innovating in some specific areas. Of course, I thought about this, for a long time, and so then, of course, I will discuss possible solutions.
Okay, I think first of all, the future jingle of E-Team podcast should be including this quote. Like the more podcasts you do, the more amazing quotes you have to include. So innovation is a wild animal. I think we really let's fix it. So let me elaborate on this, Dominique. Do we domesticate? And this is the direction of creating government innovation units and creating, as you said, basically a top-down approach to somehow using the power of innovation for public good. So do we domesticate, or do we need a convention on biological diversity for innovation? So we preserve the wild species and we let them thrive where they are. And I'll let you, while I let you reflect on this, I was just at another event. We were doing a very interesting discussion on strategic foresight and cross-sectoral intelligence with the friends at WEF and UNECE just earlier today. And one of the questions from the floor was, sustainable development goals are for governments. And the question was from the private sector colleague. How about sustainable development goals for the private sector? We can't implement the public sustainable development goals. We can't be kept accountable for this. So shouldn't we have actually our own private sector agenda? So, that's just to maybe trigger a little bit, as a provocation, domesticate or preserve the biological diversity where it thrives most, which means in the private domain. And then what's then the conclusion for the network of innovation agencies, mostly rooted in government, who are around the table? Does it mean they're out of business? Does it mean they're misled in their mission statements and they should just all go and work for the private sector? Let me leave you with this provocation. Please, Dominique.
Yeah, thank you. It's very good. I mean, I like the metaphor about wild animal, etc. And of course, you can domesticate a wild animal. Just go and visit a zoo, and we see all these poor animals which are still wild and are in trouble. So this is between your two options. Actually, I think we have to learn how to redirect business innovation. Business innovation is extremely important. This is key. Actually, this is key. We will not innovate and change without the business sector. And so then we have to learn how to redirect business innovation towards areas of high societal relevance. And this is a matter of deploying the right policy instruments, changing incentives, social norms, so that the returns, we are talking of business, right? So that the returns on innovation investments become favorable for business in these socially desirable areas, sustainable, renewable energy, which is a good case, actually. Healthy foods, another good case, and so on and so forth. And I think we have three in a sense, steps here. The first, this is the narrative. I like, you know, the recent book by Acemoglu and Johnson, this big book, which is called Power and Progress, about the importance of the narrative. So a large consensus on a big problem and solutions, which will influence consumers, innovators, investors. But installing the narrative, we know that it's very complex and difficult. Actually, this is part of your job, I think. There is no recipe. The narrative on climate, on energy, I mean, took decades to be put in place, and it's still fragile, actually. An interesting contrast is that the narrative on COVID pandemic, you know, was installed within 1 week. So this is interesting to see the contrast. And so then this narrative, the easiness to have the narrative, etc., is depending about how stressful is the crisis. First, second, whether the transformation which is suggested generates winners but also losers, and how strong are the scientific evidence, and how society is ready to get to treat this scientific evidence, and whether the solutions are rather simple, like just a vaccine, or very complex, like, you know, in the climate. So all these things makes the narrative probably difficult and complex, but this is really a big issue, actually. And so that's the first point. The second point is, because we are talking of business, this is about repairing markets, which means that when we talk of markets institutions, a key problem is that the existing polluting technologies, for example, or unhealthy food products, are sold at a price reflecting all costs, as we know. So all costs, including the social costs, environmental costs, etc., etc. Let's take an example. I told it to my students yesterday. You know, you have the choice for foods, you know, between some kind of bio eggplants, you know, des aubergines bio of Valorbe, versus, you know, a frozen pizza from a global company, etc., etc. Of course, the aubergine de Valorbe, so the eggplant, the bio, is expensive. You know, you have no pesticides, so a lot of labor-intensive works. This is a small-scale production. It's not cultivated all the year, etc. So the price is high. And then, of course, the frozen pizza is in competitive advantage unless all the costs, the external costs of the frozen pizza are included. And this is public health cost, of course. There is a recent report by the FAO Food and what is the name, actually? Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, about the hidden cost of agriculture and food products. And this is first public health, second environment. So then the markets have to be repaired so that all costs are reflected in price, and the price of the frozen pizza might be more expensive, so that at the end, mes aubergines bio are in competitive advantage, right? So this is market reparation. And the third point, so we had the narrative, we had this market reparation, and the third point, this is innovation policy. We have a toolbox, but of course, I mean, this toolbox is full of instruments to address fixed costs, to reward innovators in the right direction, etc., etc. And at the end, this is a sort of 3D, you know, 3 dimensions, 3 steps model, narrative, repairing markets, innovation policy, which should help to redirect business innovation. And the boom today of renewable energy shows that this is possible, but it takes time. It has taken more than 10 years for renewable energy becoming a profitable, you know, innovation for the business sector. And now this is an incredible, of course, step change for renewable energy, but it took more than 10 years. In 2010, the situation was not good at all for, you know, this kind of innovation. And the question then is whether we have time, right?
Absolutely, and your example with nutrition, with the quality of food we eat, is a very pertinent one. Again, this morning, it's a full agenda today. I was in an event about food systems and climate change. And a striking fact that despite all the advocacy and all the efforts, and this was coming from the World Health Organization director for nutrition, the share of ultra-processed foods in global consumption has been growing steadily, and nothing seems to be able to stop it. It's a trend. It is cheaper, easier, trendier, unfortunately. And of course, here, living in, let's say, in Switzerland and in Western Europe, one can feel, oh, no, people are eating healthier. However, we shouldn't forget that we are in the bubble and that the world out there operates on a very, very different sets of incentives. So I really take away what you say about incentive structures and the three bits: the narrative, the pricing, and the innovation policy tools. Now, let me ask you, Dominique, would you say, okay, it's slow, it takes time, and gradually, I think, policy regulation evolves. So some of these incentives get built into a new generation of laws, and especially, in spaces like the European Union, you can see it happening quite speedily. Even though you can also see some pushback and some of the very progressive measures being retracted because of the pushback, for example, from the farmers. But let's say that this is moving in the right direction. However, I want to ask you, 10 years ago and today, the role of technology in this picture, is it the same? When the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted, we hardly had the level of reliance on the network, let's say on smartphone. Definitely didn't have the quantum computing, definitely imagined the power of a generative AI, nor did we really understand yet very smart people and very elite labs did the potential of biotech to transform the future of medicine, to transform the future of food and many other areas. So would you say there is a step change in the influence of technology on the ability of humanity to solve its problems, and B, is the government able to catch up even? Is it technology aware enough and ready to use and deploy it in a way that would be meaningful?
Yeah, this is a great question, Dmitry. Thanks. Actually, I think the difference between 10 years ago and now is that we realize slowly that technology alone cannot solve all the problems, right? Until now, we talked of business innovation. So this might be carbon sequestration technologies, more efficient battery, or pest-resistant seeds, or new vaccines. All technologies are useful, of course. But now we realize that another type of innovation is of increasing relevance, and this is exactly what you have focusing on, guys. This is precisely transformative, meaning innovation which triggers system-level transformation. So which means that we are not that much interested in one technology by one innovator. We are interested in transforming a system, a circular economy in the food industry, sustainable transportation system in the city of Geneva, a sustainable water management system in Spain. That's what we want to do. And then we realize that this kind of objective is not only technological, it involves multiple stakeholders, multiple challenges, technologies, of course, but also changing social practices and behaviors, repairing markets, provision of new infrastructures, and so on and so forth. And then the main problem is coordination. This is, how to coordinate a multiplicity of stakeholders, aligning incentives, providing the new infrastructure, promoting innovation, changing social practices, etc. So the point is a coordinated push where technology is part of the game and of the picture, but not only the technology. And actually, if you take, the idea of the sustainable mobility in a big city like Geneva or Zurich, etc. So you need new infrastructures about, well, I mean, Zurich or Geneva, this is not good examples. In California, let's say, in the Bay Area, between San Francisco and Palo Alto, or everyone has the private car, etc., etc. Yeah. So, and you have I mentioned it because you have precisely a policy process about mobility on demand to really shift the whole system towards more sustainability. So you need better infrastructures in public transport, sharing economy, carpooling. You need startups for e-bicycle, etc. You need maybe incentives by employers, to provide bonus for the employee who are traveling through public transport, influencing large-scale behavioral tipping, actually, and so on and so forth. And so then you need a chef d'orchestre. The key point is this is orchestration and large-scale experiments, and who will be the conductor? I think large companies can do it, and they would like to do it, actually. IBM Smart City or Unilever, some kind of water system management. But I think even if the large company can succeed in capturing all these coordination issues, the large firm's situation or solution will come with serious drawbacks, monopolization, bias, etc. So then this is the public sector role, actually. The public sector has to orchestrate, all this change to have a coordinated push and to really move to system level transformation. And here, of course, the things are very much more interesting than just business innovation. Business innovation is part of the game, but has also to be coordinated with, again, social practices, social norms, infrastructures, incentives, and so on and so forth. And I'm really interested now on this kind of what you work on, system level transformation, which are very difficult, I think, to manage for the public sector.
Thank you. And I think in any podcast, there should also be an advertising bit jingle. So while we haven't prepared the jingle, let me use this opportunity, Dominique, because you're giving me a perfect excuse. It's music to my ears what you're saying about systems change and coordinating and orchestrating, various technological inputs, social behavior change, and so on. We are from ECE side trying, and here comes the advertising, humbly on the platform that we're servicing, the intergovernmental platform, to do it. So I give you one example, the really breakthrough climate strategy for the inland transport that was just adopted a month ago. It sounds very boring, strategy for decarbonization of inland transport, but it is actually a fundamental shift because member states agreed for the first time to say, we can't just continue pretending that mobility can remain as it was 50 years ago when we wrote the rules of procedure for the inland transport for the UN. So decarbonizing, it doesn't just mean saying, let's drive EV vehicles. It means a systemic change in how you plan infrastructure, including, for example, charging infrastructure, what environmental cost this has. Who do you need in the room to design a new generation of vehicles? What are the liability regimes for the vehicles that drive themselves but are much more efficient? And so on and so forth. So literally, we have now a mandate to do this in the next few years. And we are looking forward to collaborating and innovating together with you on this. Another example is our work on public-private partnerships. We have a privilege to host an assessment methodology that looks at the public-private partnership project from an SDG perspective. And it's very tough because for financiers to say, actually, I have to consider the social effect of the road I'm building or the environmental footprint and do it all together with the economic analysis in a structured way is tough. But the Pierce methodology that we've developed does actually precisely that. And we see more and more uptake. Now, so that was so much for the advertising of EC. Now, the challenge with all these wonderful regulatory shifts and big strategies adopted by the UN and the methodologies that are perfect, and then life is imperfect. And then countries around the world, California probably will manage with or without our help, but countries around the world, and I'm here especially focusing on developing countries, in this region or beyond, would come and say, look, we agree with you. We need systems change. I'd like to have a water management system in Kyrgyzstan, in Bishkek, that is as efficient as it's possible, because I have a water scarcity crisis, in fact, in Kyrgyzstan, may say the mayor of Bishkek. But I have basics. My roads are crumbling, basics not covered. My hospitals are full. And unfortunately, I don't have a luxury of offering organic foods to my kids in school, because I can barely buy the packaged ones. So, and it's a tough one, Dominique. It's the whole dilemma of whether or not the cutting edge approaches, the really sometimes blue sky thinking, that we're talking about here, and the reality of developing countries where basic poverty, inequality, and infrastructure gaps are still massive. So what's your take on that?
Actually, this is, of course, a big issue, Dmitry, and this is about your pact, right? I mean, the idea of the pact is to take care of the asymmetric position of various countries vis-à-vis the transition and the cost of the transition. Innovation is expensive, is always expensive. The fixed cost of developing new technologies, of changing social practices are high, actually, as well as all other costs. And so then, I mean, I am not very creative here. I mean, the transfer of technology is absolutely crucial and should work in an efficient way. I have so many, we can have hope, just from EPFL. I know so many labs which are working for transferring technologies to, the developing world, actually. And so this is, of course, a key issue, as well as generating some sort of financial tools, to finance the required new infrastructures, etc., etc. The toolbox of, new financial engineering tools is very rich, actually, like the social impact bond, etc., to attract private investors for investing in these countries. And it works, actually, in many dimensions. So again, we have to recognize this asymmetric position, and of course, providing a lot of supports to this country, so to organize their transition. And this pact should also recognize the fact that you have winners and losers, actually, including in the rich countries. We know that with les gilets jaunes in France and the agricultural crisis everywhere, so, and winners and losers. I mean, even a good innovation has cost, even a new innovation we are thinking, that's really great for our future, has cost. It generates creative destruction, which means that, of course, I mean, a lot of regions and territories with the old specialization about mining, fossil fuels, etc., are really in big crisis. I'm part of a project for all the countries close to the Danube, where they have to really manage their transition from coal mining, etc., to new things to do. It's really, it's difficult. So creative destruction, also even good innovations are generating negative externalities. Think of wind turbines, wind turbines. Everybody likes wind turbines if it is not in my village, as we know. So all these things have to be compensated, etc. So we have poor and rich countries, we have winners and losers, and of course, I mean, it's complex to manage, of course.
Thank you, Dominique, and I fully agree with you. And it was very interesting today at the Regional Forum. The delegation of Turkmenistan made a very interesting proposal to focus on circular economy and to establish a global circular economy innovation fund. To have this coming from an oil and gas exporting country, that is a country in transition, and may not have been seen before as a champion of circularity, but has really picked up this agenda, I think is really welcome news. We, by the way, have seen in ECE, and here is I think also a reflection and kudos to the team, that circular economy is a very interesting movement that has a natural tendency to bring stakeholders from across the board together, because this is not about environment. This is about changing business models and also about behavior of consumers. So we really hope that more innovation that is also coming from developing countries can happen in that space. Now, you mentioned the Pact of the Future and the Summit of the Future, where we expect the Pact of the Future to be adopted. Now, a lot of attention is on that. It's the trending keyword of 2024. Of course, nothing will materially change in the world once the pact is adopted. It is just a document, and moreover, it's a document adopted by consensus of 193 member states, hopefully, which means it will be watered down because you cannot reach consensus easily at the UN. Now, what you mentioned is key. It is an attempt to create a narrative that actually reflects multiple realities. And it might mean that some of the really progressive language on the futures of this world, on the tough governance challenges, on the need to rethink the way we deal with challenge of peace, may not make it to the pact. Now, what can we do to have more voices in that pact that are apolitical, that are not about geopolitical groupings, because this is right now the conversation at the UN, but that are about scientific facts, that are about the power of science and technology to actually alter the course that humanity is on? And can we find formulations? Can we find narratives that are understandable equally? I would dare say, let me pick a country, hopefully not offending anyone, in London and in Bishkek, and in Palo Alto and in Durban. I didn't pick countries with any intention in mind. But do you think the scientific community can play a role? Is this a moment where you, also coming from this community, from the academic community, you feel that you have a say, that you're empowered, that people are listening to you? As one example, we know the Secretary General has just convened an advisory council on artificial intelligence. That's a good example. There is another council on other breakthrough technologies convened by the SG. But can science play a role in the context when politically member states can hardly achieve much in these negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, this is of course a great question. Of course, I mean, I'm from the academic side, so I'm sure that scientists are extremely powerful and actually contributed to the narrative to a certain extent. At some points, maybe the message is more difficult to pass when, precisely we have losers and so on and so forth. In this perspective, we have to say that economists maybe were a bit late, to say the least, in this kind of movement, probably later than ecologists, environmental scientists, and so on and so forth. So, and economists have a key role to play. But now there is no one serious economist who would not say, you need to internalize all the negative externalities and so on and so forth. And we have tax and we have regulation and we have innovation, etc., etc. So then, of course, the scientists contributed to the narrative. Maybe you should be more creative in terms of who should be really involved in this emergence of a global story that can be understood both, as you said, in Palo Alto and in some cities in Africa and in the east of Europe, etc., etc. Again, the scientific message. I mean, I was thinking, something which is, that is very well understood, from Palo Alto to Kyrgyzstan and from Durban to Edinburgh. This is football, right?
Football.
Yeah, football. And then why not including, in your pact, the FIFA, So the International Football Association, the headquarters is in Zurich, by the way. In Lyon, you have the UEFA and you have the Olympic Committee in Lausanne. Everyone is close to you. And, maybe that Mbappe has, I don't know, 100 million followers. And Cristiano Ronaldo too, and Leo Messi too, so that's much more than any kind of the most famous scientist, right? And so then these people can really play a big role in shifting social norms, and then just the simple idea not to fly, from Manchester to Arsenal for the next game, but take a bus, might be very, very key, in the sense that, of course, this is not a carbon footprint issue. This is just demonstration, role model, etc., etc. So you should talk with these people actually, and maybe they have multiplier effects, I say that because I like football, so then this was my.
I'm with you. And I think we're trying to bring in the power of celebrities and their following to advocate for key development issues. Indeed. I would like now to open the floor to our distinguished audience, to the members of the ETI network who are online, for an opportunity to ask the direct question live to Dominique. Question, challenge, or maybe even just a free-flowing remark. And while we are waiting for you to raise your hands, please do. Dominique, we didn't speak much about climate change today, not yet. When you talk to your students about the economy, about the future of future of the world, about even let's say economic systems and how they're evolving, about innovation, to which extent you are able today to put the actually catastrophic reality of climate change on the table? Is this part of the curriculum already? As part of the economics course, are you finding through generations of students that you have taught or have guided in research a change in perception, in the paradigm of thinking? Because we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, and the fact that simply the realities of our lives, the ability to use resources, ability to ski in winter, well, for the luxury part of the population that we belong to, but much more importantly, to have access to drinking water for the billions out there, will change because of climate change. So how is it in your space?
I mean, this is a great question, and that makes me optimistic, actually. That makes me optimistic for the future, because the students have changed a lot for, the last decade. Absolutely, and in many ways. So they of course understand, these grand challenges, the big problems of climate, as you said, water, biodiversity, etc., etc. And my courses, I have a PhD doctoral course on these problems, which is extremely successful. And this is great because I have students from all schools, engineering, life science, computer science, basic science, etc. They are all coming, and we try to solve problems all together. So they have this aspiration to understand what's happening and then to have impact. So which means that 10 years ago, many students wanted to launch a startup to make money. Today, this is more to have a social impact. Yesterday, I had really discussion with one student. This was a lot of emotion because he was saying, now I don't know what I will do, because it's so complex to have an impact because of what you are teaching, because I said, of course, you need consumers, you need cost improvement, you need quality improvement if you want to have an impact on markets, etc. And so then, but I'm optimistic because of this awareness, rising awareness. And Dmitry, I think universities have a key role to play because first, we are doing research in these kind of areas. We are teaching and educating students. Then there is a third spillover. This is international student migration. When a student coming to EPFL, students from, let's say, Kyrgyzstan, coming to EPFL. Yeah. He is doing a degree in chemistry. I bet that 4 years later, when he will go back to his country, he will, start a startup in green biochemistry. And this is not because he has got a lot of doxa or etc., but he talked with his friends. Actually, he's participating to social events. He's going to the coffee shops on EPFL, and all these things change these people a lot actually. And so then we have this kind of spillovers. And I talk of EPFL, but all universities in Western Europe and etc. have the same kind of mechanism, which makes, the message, the narrative expanding, I think, rather quickly. And so that makes me optimistic. Also, of course, again, we have no time. Huh?
Yeah, it's the time factor is a very interesting one. Today, at one of the events I was speaking at, there was this question about slow may be good because you might want to ensure that your regulatory process is smart and not rushed, that it's considerate of multiple realities and viewpoints. Indeed. And then I just want to also acknowledge what you're saying about the spread of ideas. The role of universities, and a role of mutual learning, including on greening the economy as a concept that has become much more inherent in discussions, almost in any boardroom or any classroom, almost around anywhere in the world, even in some of the poorest countries. We have a question from the floor from Björn-Ola Linner from Sweden, who I think is in Geneva right now, if I'm not mistaken. So Björn-Ola, over to you for your question.
Now I'm in Sweden, but I miss Geneva, of course. So yeah, just returned from that. Thanks so much for a fantastic, both of you. This has been a fantastic discussion, very, very giving a lot of ideas and thoughts. So besides my interest in society transformations that you have discussed today, and being part of the ETI network, I lead a research program on geopolitics of sustainability, and just returned from a program conference there. So hence my question is that I would like to hear your views on the geopolitical challenge. We see a sort of a rivalry around the green industrial policies around the world, but also, so that is one aspect that we see the sort of the geopolitical challenges. So when we talk about innovation and the systems transformation, I think this is just what we need, and it very much emphasized when we speak of climate in the global stocktake that was discussed at COP28 and so on. But we also see this sort of industrial rivalry that I think might affect or create a challenge for what you just have discussed. So I would like to hear your views on that. And on that note, we also see a pushback from fossil fuel incumbents. We know that Saudi Arabia pushed heavily against including the language of transformation in the COP28 decision, the UEA outcome, and are creating new sort of business deals with or contracts with countries in Africa and so on. So while there is hope in what you describe in the innovations that we can see, we also see a strong pushback. So I'm sort of a bit concerned that how we will see a spread of this around the world. You'd address sort of the challenges in the low and middle income countries, but just yeah. It's not much of a question, just more of a, I would like to hear your views on that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yes, a very important point. I'd like to collect a few more because we will have now this round of questions, then back to Dominique for quick reactions, and we'll have to wrap up with the game as per usual. But we have a hand from Stephanie Engelhardt. Please, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I like the discussion, and I'm very I agree with Dominic, who said innovations are expensive at the first time. When you scale up, it's more cheaper, but the first time it's very expensive. And I think there's a huge problem because nobody wants to pay the money. So there's the demand side. They want the solutions, but they don't have the money to buy very expensive products, for example. There's the investor side. The investor side only want to invest in innovations who are still on the market or reach the market. And then you have the regulations, and the regulations should push in the direction of sustainability, but they also are crying it's too expensive to make the infrastructure and stuff like that. And I see the financing of innovation is the biggest problem. For example, the electrical driving on the streets, it needed a Tesla because all industry had the innovations. I worked for a big group and they had innovations for electrical driving, but nobody does it because it's too expensive and they want to have the combustion engine. So I see this from the industry side. So I'm very interested how is what do the science side say to that problem of the financing of innovations?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I mean, you're getting very easy questions for the last 3 minutes, Dominique. So geopolitics, financing. Let's get the third one. I'm sure it's going to be in that league. Leonard Keller from Cambridge University. Please, Leonard.
Thanks, Dmitry. And thank you, Dominique, for a very interesting talk and set of insights. I'd like to dip into one specifically on the topic of narratives and the comparison of experiences during COVID versus climate change, sustainability, and so on and so forth. And I was very taken with your point about how the narrative embedded itself within about a week in COVID, whereas in sustainability, we seem to be doing much, much longer timelines and horizons. I'm just wondering, are there lessons from the experiences of COVID in terms of how to disseminate and embed a new narrative across systems and across societies very, very quickly that we can adopt within sustainability? Or is the problem that COVID was essentially a tame problem, sustainability is a more complex, more wicked problem? Are there no lessons at all that we can bring forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. I'll have to close the list of questions at this and ask Dominique to give, elevator pitch style, really one-liner answers to these three excellent questions. Dominique, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So maybe with I can start with Leonard. Actually, I think the parallel between COVID and climate narrative is very interesting. And I met a great scientist, high reputation in Switzerland here. And she said, let's hope a real disaster, in climate, but a real one, like a hurricane, on the city of London, right, where you have all the investors, and then the narrative is getting to be built rapidly. So, and this is exactly, the lesson from COVID, but I don't think we should hope that. The other point about the narrative is that, the solution was clear, actually. The solution was clear. This was just a technology, right? Of course, I mean, the consensus was not full, but I mean, most of the people agreed of this. The solution was a vaccine, right? While for climate, the solutions are much more complex. So that's really about these ideas that we can think of. So thanks, Leonard. And then on Stephanie, of course, I mean, there are many issues here. Yes, innovation is costly. First, business innovation, in a sense, has to be funded through, internal cash flow of large companies and through VC for the small one, etc. Now we have principle for responsible investments, agreement and norms, etc., which might help to finance the right kind of innovation. And I think it is important. Then you have social innovation, which means that where there is no business case at all, we should not give up. And social innovation means, innovations which has to be funded by other kind of mechanisms, philanthropy, governments, and so on. and so forth. But I mean, of course, I mean, it's very short, and we can continue the discussion later if you like it. And finally, about Björn, I think it's a very good point. There is a good point about this green industrial policy and the global race. It will decrease. Actually, this is related to Stephanie's issue. It will decrease costs. You know, the fixed cost of innovation, the per unit operational cost, everything are going to be reduced for, you know, important innovations in the green transition, and that's fine. But of course, then, you know, it's a bit the issue is that we should also take care not only on technologies, and it seems to me that social norms, how social norms can shift, it is extremely important, and governments should learn how, you know, to manage this, you know, because there was an article in Le Monde today or yesterday, you know, to decarbonize aviation. We need not only to rely on technologies, right? We need to reduce traffic. And that's about social. Of course, you have an economic instrument. This is tax, you know, of course, you can price tickets, etc. But this is also an issue of tipping points, you know, the tipping points where people will change their behaviors. And that's really a sort of an unknown territory. We don't know really how to do this. And that's really a key point. I'm finishing, Dmitry, with this great, you know, Dick Nelson, great economist I like, very old grandfather of everything in my field. He said, you know, why my country, so the US was able to land a man on the moon, but is not able to solve, you know, problems like, you know, the ghetto or now the problem of obesity and so on and so forth, because these problems are social problems. And we not just engineering. Landing a man on the moon was just technologies. And so then governments, and that's your agenda, I think, is really also to teach government not to have co-process of producing the knowledge how to shift social norms, social practices, etc. And it's much more difficult than to manage technologies.
Well, with this really important point and this quote, we finished today's discussion. Before we move to the game, I'd like to really thank Dominique and all of you, but Dominique for your wisdom, for your provocative points, for sharing with us. I think generally an inspiring picture, generally a picture of hope that I think feeds on the energy of the young generation of researchers and students that you interact with. We will need to make sure that we can observe the wild animal of innovation in the wild, ideally, while of course learning from it and making sure that social innovation is really part and parcel of how governments tackle the very, very complex issues of sustainable development that remain largely unsolved today. With this, back to the team, back to you, Mikael,
Yes,
and thank you once again.
Pass the ball over to Emanuela.
Yes, thank you also from my side, Dominique. So as is tradition in our podcast episodes, we've now grilled you with questions, and now it's our turn to ask our audience some questions about you. So the game is we have two lies and one truth, and I am submitting now a poll in the chat, and you can see the statements here. So I'd kindly ask those here and online to please indicate which statement do you think is true about Dominique. So we'll give you a few moments time to cast your vote, and then we'll hand over back to Dominique for the solution. Okay, the responses are coming in. I see that it's fairly equal, actually. We have a tie, so
Can you show it, or
it's in the chat. So we have 40% now think the first statement is true, and the second and third 30%. So Dominique, please tell us which one is true.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very nice game, actually. So the first statement is wrong because there is a difference in Switzerland between the University of Lausanne and the EPFL, the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. and no, but this is interesting because, you know, this is two levels of governance and funding, actually. Universities are funded at the cantonal level and report to the cantonal state. So for the University of Lausanne, this is the Canton de Vaud, while the École Polytechnique Fédérale Lausanne and Zurich, they are funded by the federal level and are reporting to the Confederation, actually. So this is this kind of, I wanted just to show this point. And of course, the École Polytechnique Fédérale Lausanne and Zurich are really les bijoux de la couronne. Huh? This is really great institutions. And the second, so Merkel, this is true. Actually, I was very proud to be advising her for innovation and research, actually. And this was by the time of the first Ukraine war between 2014 and 2018. I was in this Expertskommission für Forschung und Innovation. So we met her many times in Berlin in the Bundeskanzleramt, and I really admired her, actually, because, you know, this was a time where she had to call to Putin every day, but then she took care about our report on innovation and she discussed with us, and I found it extremely admirable, actually. And the third one is wrong. This was just the idea to, you know, have a thought to Paul David, because I made my postdoc at Stanford, actually, and I was supervised by Paul David, who passed away last year. Actually, he was a great supervisor, and he really taught me a lot about innovation, path dependence, economics of science, etc. Voila.
Fantastic. You really, I personally love this kind of game in the end, because you always learn something unexpected about the participants. Let me tell you, Björn Ola, who asked one of the questions, he has my favorite now of truths. He was actually caught in former Soviet Union for smuggling Bibles. I think that's the top so far. Besides, myself, I did my postdoc at MIT, so it was kind of, yeah, there you go. Thank you so much to the both of you. This has been really interesting. I think this has been a sort of a unique and very episode for us, because it's really thanks to the both of you. We've seen the insights from the floor. Your references to what has been discussed is actually refreshing, particularly when you put it in context to the discussion, let's call it the academic framing of it all. And so we got empirical evidence, we got nailed the critical issues that are important for us in the network to pursue. So thanks for that, Dominique, it was great. And actually, I also wanted to pick up, Stephanie, you will have a lot of financing in the next episode, because that one is going to deal exactly with financing. And we're going to have, just making the advertisement here, we're going to have Victoria Shaw from Tipsy moderating a discussion with Johan Schott and Roberta Benedetti del Rios, who's an investor. So then we also will have the meeting between the research and the analyses with the actual practitioners. So all of you, very welcome to the next episode in 2 weeks. And thank you so much again to Dmitry and to Dominique. Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you tomorrow, Dominic.